Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7.
Proud to be here.
Today we are jumping straight into a high-energy provocation that touches literally everyone, whether you are devoutly religious or a staunch atheist. Here is the question. Is God a delusion?
That is the big one.
Right. I mean, is religion just a massive cognitive mistake made by primitive minds who just didn't understand where the sun went at night? Or, and this is the really provocative part, is God actually the most real physical force you encounter every single day?
A force that dictates how you dress, how you speak, and what you value.
Exactly. Because usually we think those are the only two options. Either God is a supernatural being up in the clouds, or God is just a fantasy invented by scared humans.
But the source material we are covering today argues that both the believers and the atheists are completely wrong.
They're totally missing the point. We're doing a deep dive into one of the seminal texts of sociology. It is called The Elementary Forms of Religious Life by Emil Durkheim, published back in 1912.
Durkheim is an absolute titan in the field. He was the son of a rabbi, but he eventually became agnostic. And he's really the man who established sociology as a strict science.
Yeah, his mission in this book was to go back to the very beginning, to the most primitive societies he could find, to understand why humans are basically hardwired to worship.
And his conclusion is wild. He basically says that God does exist.
But not as a man or a ghost.
Right. God is society.
God is society,
Huh.
which sounds crazy at first.
It is the collective power of society itself, just projected outward.
Okay, before we explain how on earth he gets to that conclusion, because it sounds like a riddle, I want to mention something quickly. We're going to be breaking down some heavy concepts today. If you like my channel, please subscribe and press the like button. It really helps us keep these deep dives coming.
It makes a huge difference.
So Durkheim wants to find the origin of religion. But he doesn't start with Christianity or Buddhism. Why ignore the big players?
Because they are just too cluttered. If you want to understand how a complex biological organism works, you don't start by dissecting a human brain. You look at a single-celled amoeba.
You strip it down.
Exactly. Durkheim applied that logic to religion. Christianity has thousands of years of theology, politics, philosophy layered on top. You just can't see the bones of the system.
So he turned his attention to the Australian Aboriginal tribes, specifically the Arunta people.
Yes, he believed their totemism was the simplest form of religion available to study.
He starts by clearing the deck, though. He spends a lot of time tearing down the popular theories of his day about where religion actually comes from. And the big one was animism.
Right. This was the theory popularized by E.B. Tyler. The idea was that primitive people were just confused by dreams.
Which, to be fair, makes sense to me. I mean, if I dream about my grandfather who passed away and he is talking to me walking around, if I didn't know better, I would assume he has a double or a soul that survives death. Why does Durkheim reject that?
Because dreams are inconsistent. They are phantoms. You wake up and you are hungry or thirsty, and the dream just fades.
It evaporates.
Right. Durkheim's argument is that religion is the most powerful, durable institution in human history. It builds cathedrals, it starts wars, it binds millions of people together for centuries.
So you can't build something that massive on a fleeting illusion.
Precisely. He argued that you cannot build a reality that's stable on a foundation of hallucinations. Religion is not a mistake. It is a response to something real.
And what about nature? The other prevailing theory was that people were just terrified of lightning and eclipses, so they started worshiping the sun.
The naturism theory. Durkheim dismisses this even faster. He points out that if you actually live in a primitive society, nature isn't shocking, it is monotonous.
It's just the background of your life.
Exactly. The sun comes up every day. It's a clock, not a miracle.
Okay.
Primitive man isn't walking around in a constant state of awe. He's just trying to find food. Regularity doesn't inspire worship, it inspires routine.
So if it's not ghosts in our dreams, and it's not the scary storm outside, where does this idea of the sacred come from?
It comes from the clan. This is where we have to look at the structure of these Australian tribes. They are organized into clans, which are families not by blood, but by name.
The totem.
Yes, the kangaroo clan, the emu clan, the witchetty grub clan. The totem is the name, but it is much more than that. It is an emblem. It's a crest.
Like a mascot.
Deeper than a mascot. Think of it like a national flag. The totem is the symbol of the society. It distinguishes us from them.
Okay, so they have a logo. How do we get from a logo to God?
This is the detective work. Durkheim observes that the tribesmen treat the totem, the actual image or the animal, as sacred. They worship it.
They pray to it.
They have strict rules about it. You can't kill your totem animal. You can't touch the emblem without permission. So the totem is the symbol of the divine.
Okay, I follow the logic. Totem equals God.
But the totem is also the symbol of the clan. It represents the group itself.
I see the math happening here.
If the totem symbolizes God and the totem symbolizes the society, then God and society are the same thing.
That is a massive leap, though, just because they use the same symbol.
Well, think about the attributes of God. God is immortal. Society outlives the individual. God is all-powerful. Society dictates your language, your laws, your safety.
That's true.
God demands sacrifice. Society sends you to war or asks you to pay taxes. Durkheim asks, what is the only empirical, observable thing in the world that actually fits the description of God? It is the collective force of other human beings.
So when the Arunta worship the kangaroo, they aren't actually worshiping the animal at all?
No.
They are worshiping the fact that they are a group.
They are worshiping their own unity. They are worshiping the thing that keeps them safe and gives them an identity.
That frames religion in a completely different light. It's not about the supernatural. It is about social glue.
And that leads to Durkheim's definition of religion. He says it is not about gods or spirits. Buddhism doesn't have a creator god in the traditional sense, yet it is obviously a religion. Durkheim says religion is defined by the absolute division of the world into two hostile camps: the sacred and the profane.
Let's drill down on this, because profane usually just means swearing to modern ears. What does he mean by the profane?
The profane is ordinary life. It's individual. It's the daily grind. It's you being hungry, you being cold, you doing your job. It's monotonous and safe.
And the sacred.
The sacred is dangerous. It is powerful. It is collective. And the most important rule is that these two worlds cannot touch. You cannot walk from the profane into the sacred without a ritual to protect you.
So if you treat a sacred object like a profane object, it is blasphemy.
Exactly.
He uses the example of the chiringa to illustrate this. These are the sacred objects of the Arunta.
Yes, usually pieces of wood or stone with the totem carved on them. Now, physically, scientifically, it is just a piece of wood. It has the exact same molecular structure as a twig you would step on in the forest.
But socially, it is radioactive.
Radioactive is a perfect word for it. Women and uninitiated men aren't even allowed to see them. If they do, historically, they could be killed. But for the initiated men, touching the chiringa heals wounds. It gives them strength before battle. It calms the soul.
It's the placebo effect on a massive societal scale.
But it is entirely real to them. Durkheim compares it to a flag. A flag is just dyed cloth. It's cheap, it's flammable, it's profane material.
Yeah.
But if you burn a flag in a public square, you provoke a massive emotional reaction. People will fight, they will die to keep that piece of cloth from touching the ground. Why? Because it isn't cloth anymore. It is the nation.
The chiringa isn't wood. It is the clan.
Exactly.
And this brings us to the Force. The book talks about mana. This sounds like something straight out of a video game.
It's where video games actually got the term. The Melanesians call it mana. The Sioux call it wakan. It's this idea of an impersonal force like electricity or a fluid that flows through sacred things.
Before there were named gods like Zeus or Yahweh, there was just this energy.
Right. And Durkheim argues this mana is just the physical sensation of the group's pressure.
The pressure of the group.
Think about it. Have you ever been in a massive crowd? A protest, a huge concert, or the final minute of a championship sports game?
Oh, absolutely. The air changes. You can feel this hum in your chest.
That hum is mana. It is the collective energy of thousands of people focusing on one single thing. It feels physical. It feels like it is coming from outside of you.
It takes you over.
Durkheim says primitive people felt this incredible energy, and they didn't know it was just social psychology. They thought it was a cosmic force.
But here's the problem with that energy. It fades. If I go home from the concert, the buzz wears off. I am back to being just me paying my bills. If God is society, wouldn't God effectively die every time everyone goes home to sleep?
That is exactly why rituals exist. Durkheim calls this collective effervescence. He describes the gathering of the clans called a corroboree. Imagine the scene. The tribe is usually scattered in small family groups, hunting, surviving. Life is quiet and profane. But then they gather for the ceremony.
This is the battery charger.
It is a high-voltage charger. It's night. Fires are lit. People are painted. There is dancing rhythmic, repetitive stamping. There is chanting. The noise level just keeps rising. Durkheim describes a sort of delirium that takes over the camp.
People stop acting like themselves.
They scream, They ignore pain. They break normal social rules. In that moment, the individual disappears entirely and the group takes over. The individual feels stronger, larger than life. They think, I am being possessed by a god.
But really, they're just getting high on the group dynamic.
Yes.
So the ritual doesn't just honor the god. The ritual creates the god.
Without the gathering, the divine energy dissipates. God needs the ritual to survive just as much as the people do.
Durkheim breaks down rituals into 3 types, and I want to go through them because they explain some really weird human behaviors. First, the negative rites. This is the painful stuff. Taboos, fasting, silence, even physical mutilation like circumcision or pulling out teeth.
The cult of asceticism.
Why? Why does the sacred want me to suffer?
Because the sacred is the exact opposite of the profane. And what are you physically? You are a profane animal. You want food, you want comfort, you want rest. To enter the sphere of the group, you have to kill the animal side of yourself. You have to deny your basic needs.
So pain is the price of admission.
Pain creates a special status. It proves you value the group more than your own physical body. That is why monks fast. That is why soldiers endure brutal boot camps. It breaks the individual to build the member.
Then there are positive rites. The book calls them mimetic. This is like doing the kangaroo dance to make sure there are actually kangaroos to hunt next season.
Right, if I act like a kangaroo, nature will produce kangaroos. It sounds like basic magic.
It is magic.
But Durkheim asks a great question. Why do they keep doing it if it doesn't work? If they do the rain dance and there is a drought, why don't they just quit?
Because it's not actually about the rain.
Exactly. It's about the confidence. The ritual reassures the group. It says, we have done what is necessary. We are together. We are safe. The primary function is psychological, not agricultural.
The third one is the most fascinating to me. Piacular rites. Mourning.
This changes how you see funerals completely.
Usually we think, I cry because I'm sad. My friend died, and I am personally heartbroken.
Durkheim says, not in the clan. In these tribes, mourning is a duty. It is mandatory. If you don't cry or wail or cut yourself to show grief, you are harshly punished.
So the emotion is mandatory.
The performance of the emotion is mandatory. Think about the structure of what just happened. A member of the clan has died. The social body has been wounded. The group feels weaker. It is a crisis of confidence.
So the group demands a response.
The ritual forces everyone to come together and close ranks. By acting out the grief together, they create a new surge of energy. They heal the social wound. The purpose of a funeral isn't to comfort the individual. It is to reassure the society that it is still alive and functioning.
It transforms individual sadness into collective strength. That is cynical, but also deeply beautiful in a way.
It is functional. It keeps the group from collapsing into despair.
So we have the body, and we have the group. This leads into Durkheim's view of the human soul. He doesn't think the soul is a ghost living in your chest.
No. For Durkheim, the soul is just the totemic principle incarnated in you. In simple terms, the soul is the society living inside the individual.
This explains that little voice in our heads.
The conscience. It perfectly explains the dualism of human nature. We all feel like two people fighting for control. One part of us is the body, selfish, hungry, sensory. The other part is the soul, moral, conceptual, disciplined, selfless.
And Durkheim says this isn't a battle between good and evil.
No, it is a battle between the individual and the collective. When you sacrifice your own desire for the greater good, that is the soul-meaning society winning over the body.
And since the society lived before you and will live long after you, the soul is immortal.
Exactly. The clan doesn't die. So the part of you that is the clan lives on in the next generation.
Now, I want to pivot to the part of the book that blew my mind the most. The relationship between science and religion. We are so used to the narrative that they are mortal enemies. Galileo versus the Pope. Evolution versus creationism.
But Durkheim flips the script entirely. He argues that science is actually the child of religion.
How does that work? Science is about pure logic. Religion is about blind belief.
Durkheim asks, where did we get the tools of logic? Where did we get the idea of classifying things? Why do we group animals into families or species?
Because that's how they are.
Is it? Or did we learn to group nature because we first grouped ourselves? We had the kangaroo clan and the emu clan. We projected that social structure onto nature. We organized the stars and the animals into tribes because that is how our own minds were socially organized.
So classification is a social habit.
And it goes even deeper. Take time and space. These are the fundamental categories of science. Durkheim argues these are social constructs born from religion.
Wait, time is definitely real. The sun rises and sets.
The sun rises, yes. But A week, a month, a year. Those aren't in nature. Nature has cycles, but it doesn't have a calendar.
Yeah.
Who invented the calendar?
People did.
Religion did. The calendar was created specifically to track feast days and rituals. We invented time to coordinate our sacred social gatherings. Without society, you don't need a Tuesday. You just have right now.
And space.
Same thing, north, south, east, west. Durkheim found that tribes organized their physical space based on where the clans sat in the camp. The north was just the direction of the kangaroo clan. We projected our camp layout onto the universe.
So religion was the first cosmology. It was the first attempt to make sense of the world.
Yes. Religion was a primitive science. They only fight over speculation now, explaining how nature works, and science has clearly won that battle.
We don't need a priest to tell us why it rains anymore. We have meteorologists.
Yeah.
So is religion doomed? If science wins the explanation game, does God vanish?
This is Durkheim's most profound conclusion. He says, no, science can replace the explanations, but it cannot replace the action.
The action.
Science is cold. It can tell you how to cure a virus or how to build a nuclear bomb, but it cannot tell you why you should care about your neighbor. It cannot provide that collective effervescence. You do not get into a state of delirious joy reading a chemistry textbook.
You definitely don't.
Society needs that heat, that energy to survive. It needs to worship itself to stay together. So the old gods might die, Zeus is gone, Odin is gone, but the need for the sacred remains. New sacred things will inevitably be born.
He points to the French Revolution as proof of this.
Right. The revolutionaries tried to kill the church. They wanted a purely secular state, but what did they do almost immediately? They created a cult of reason. They made the fatherland sacred. They had martyrs, hymns, public rituals. They treated the concept of liberty exactly like a totem.
We just swap the symbols.
We swap the symbols, but the mechanism is exactly the same. Society cannot exist without worshiping itself.
This brings us to the end of the source material, and it leaves us with a pretty heavy realization. If Durkheim is right, atheism in the strict sense is impossible.
You can be an atheist regarding a supernatural creator, but you cannot be an atheist regarding the sacred. Unless you live entirely alone in a cave, you are submitting to social forces every single day.
You follow rules you didn't write.
You feel immense shame when you break taboos. You feel energized when you are part of a movement. You are worshiping the social force, whether you call it God or not.
So if the bearded man in the clouds is just a metaphor for society, we have to ask ourselves something. What are the totems we are worshiping right now without even realizing it?
That is the question. We don't dance around a wooden pole anymore. But look at the economy.
Oh, that is a big one.
Think about it. The economy is a sacred entity. It demands faith. We literally call it consumer confidence. When it gets sick during a recession, what do? We offer sacrifices. We accept mass layoffs. We suffer austerity measures, piacular rights to heal the market. We treat the stock market graphs with the same awe and terror that the Arunta treated the Turinga.
Or look at politics. The political rally is the modern corroboree. The chanting, the specific colors you wear, the demonization of the other side. And if you step out of line, if you tweet the wrong thing, you face the negative rights. You get canceled. You get cast out of the clan.
Exactly. The taboos have changed, but the punishment is the same. Exile.
It is humbling. We think we are these rational, modern, scientific individuals. But strip away the smartphones and the suits, and we are still just tribesmen looking for a totem to keep us together in the dark.
We haven't changed nearly as much as we like to think.
Something to chew on the next time you feel that magnetic pull to join a cheering crowd. Thanks for listening to Thinking Deeper by 6-7.